Hi guys, welcome back to my channel. I hope you're all doing well. I'm not entirely sure where the past year has gone, but apparently we are back to that time of year again where W7 graces us with some new Huda Beauty mini obsessions dupes, and I have to review them all in one go. And at this point, because I'm working full time, it's a logistical nightmare, but that is what we are here to do today. W7 have literally just released 3 new palettes, which are, you know what, I don't actually know if there's a name for the bundle. We've got the Honey palette, the Brown Sugar palette, and the Coco palette, and these are dupes for the Huda Brown Obsessions palette. Now I do have to say that when these arrived, I couldn't recognize what Huda palettes they were meant to be. I feel like we have had a lot of mini obsession palettes from her recently, and it did feel like these ones kind of flew under the radar for me. I was maybe hoping that we were gonna get the Haze Obsessions, but I still think that these look really, really cute. I was really excited to get them, and so today we're gonna try out all 3 of them and see whether or not I think that they are any good. Quick little disclaimer as always before we jump into this video: W7 have sent me these palettes in PR. However, this is not sponsored and they haven't requested for me to make this video or any content to go with these palettes. I'm just testing these palettes because I'm very excited to have some new makeup to play with. I'm really struggling to keep up with any sort of makeup releases now that I'm working full time. So thank you very much to W7 for sending these. And as always, I feel like I have already been rambling on way too much. So let's start by jumping into the details for these palettes. Alright, so these are the mini sweet palettes. I guess, yeah, I've just realized they all say sweet on them. I will probably have figured it out by the time I post this video, as you will see from the title. And as mentioned, these are dupes for the Huda Beauty Brown Obsessions. I believe this is the 4th lot of mini obsessions dupes that we've had from W7 at this point. And if you look at these and compare them to the Huda palettes, they look pretty identical. We kind of have a similar theme with the names. I believe, for example, that there is one called chocolate, another one called caramel from the Huda palettes. So we have stayed with a very similar sweet theme. And for the packaging, we are staying with the same clear packaging that we have had ever since the Vivid Obsession palettes. In terms of pricing, we are at $4.95 for each palette on the W7 website. Now, all of the other mini palettes have come in bundles to reduce the cost if you want all 3 of them, but I couldn't see one for these ones at the moment, so I don't know if that's something that's coming later. But even without any sort of bundle, we're still under £5 for each palette, which is very reasonable. And as always, if you want to save yourself a little bit of extra money, you can use my discount code, which is in the description box down below. It isn't an affiliate code, so it doesn't earn me any money, but it does mean that you can just get a little bit of extra money off your order. Our total weight for each palette is 8.1 grams, which is the exact same as the Soft Hues palettes, but a little bit lighter than the Vivid palettes. And our cost per gram is 61p per gram, which isn't the most affordable that we've seen from W7 before, but still does remain very cheap. Now, if we compare that to the original palettes from Huda Beauty, those ones are £27 each, so obviously this is a lot cheaper, and I believe that is the standard price for the Obsessions palettes. And in terms of our weight, which was really difficult to find, which is always the case with Huda palettes, I think I got it off Feel Unique in the end. We are at 7.5 grams, which isn't that much product. You are getting slightly more in here. And our cost per gram is £3.60 per gram, which is the same as the Huda Beauty Mercury Retrograde, and is actually more expensive than the other mini obsession palettes that I own. So just in terms of the price, we do have a pretty big saving when it comes to these ones. I'm quickly going to show you the inside of each palette. So this is the Sweet Honey, which as you can see, I have already destroyed because I have used today. This one has got 5 mattes to 4 metallics. We have a marble shade here, which you can see I have already ruined. And then we have the 3 other metallics, 2 of which are definitely a more creamy formula. This one I haven't tried yet, but I imagine it would probably be the same one. Then next is the Brown Sugar palette, which is this one, which is very warm toned. And even though that's not something that normally speaks to me, I actually do think this one looks really interesting. So I'm really excited to try it. This one has got 4 mattes, 1 marble shade again, and then 4 metallics. And I'm gonna guess that maybe this one has got a different formula to the other 3 because it doesn't exactly look the same in the pan. And then finally the Sweet Cocoa, which I have to say probably isn't my favorite when I just look at it like that. It doesn't really scream to me. This one has 5 mattes, and we also actually don't have any marble shades, which I'm not necessarily mad at because I just I'm not super interested in having marble shades in all my palettes, so probably not mad at the fact that we haven't got one in here. This one looks like maybe all of these are going to be creamy. I'm not entirely sure, but I'm not really seeing something that looks like really different to the others. But what I do think is really interesting when you look really closely at some of the shades in these palettes, you'll notice that this shade over here and then the top corner over here, they've actually got some speckles of a different color in them, so they do actually look really, really interesting in the pan. And then in terms of the information that we get on the back of the palette, it's pretty standard for W7 at this point. We have our little diagram over here and our corresponding ingredient lists here. These palettes do all contain pressed pigments, which I think is what we've kind of come to expect at this point from W7. It normally tends to be what we get. And we do also have a vegan and vegetarian friendly symbol over here, which I don't think I've seen before, so that is nice to see that on there. That is it for the details of all the palettes. So let's start off by jumping into the tutorial for the Sweet Honey palette, which is the one I've got on right now. Kicking off the first of our three looks, we have the Sweet Honey palette, and I started this look the exact same as I do pretty much every single one of my looks. I started by packing on the colour with my flat brush just above and around my crease in a circular shape, and then once I packed the colour on, I went in with a blending brush to make it nice and smooth and make it easier to work in with the next colour. And I felt like it was a little bit patchy, so I did add a little bit more colour on to get it nice and even. Then next I went in with the yellow ochre shade and just started blending my first shade out, again packing on the colour to get it nice and pigmented. Next I went in with the yellow to blend out, and as you can see, the pigmentation on this one is actually really good for a yellow. It did even drop a little bit of fallout on the previous shades, and I just used it to carry on blending the crease out and just bringing the colour higher up. Then to deepen the look out, I went into the darkest brown and started by packing it onto the outer corner for my cut crease and then into the crease to really deepen the look out. And then, just as always, I went in with all of my other shades to blend that out, bring it upwards and really, really deepen everything out. Then after finishing up with the yellow, I went in with a fluffier brush and took the lightest shade, which is a really, really nice blending shade on me, and I just went between that one and the yellow to really make sure I was getting a nice smooth edge. Then once I was happy with the blend and the shape, I used some leftover P. Louise base to carve out my cut crease, and then I removed the product using some micellar water before filling in the shape with my P. Louise paint in the shade Blank Canvas, and I just used a brush to remove any excess product and tap it out. I used some of the medium brown to blend in the edge of the eyeshadow with the cut crease, and then because I did feel the outer corner was a bit patchy, I also added on some more of the deeper shade. To fill in the cut crease, I went in with the lightest gold shade and started packing it on, and as you can see, it's definitely pretty crumbly. This is another one of those more creamy shades, but it actually did pack on really well even without me spraying the brush, and I just filled in the shape. Then I went in to the darker gold shade and popped that on in between my lightest shade and my matte shades just to start creating more of a transition. And to blend the two shades in together, I used some of the yellow ochre again to give us a really nice transition. I used my Revlon eyeliner in Mighty Mocha for my waterline and my lower lash line and blended that using a pencil brush, and then I went into all of these shades that I used into the crease one by one to blend them out. I really wanted to highlight the inner corner using the marble shade, and I tried it on a couple of different brushes, but it really didn't pack the punch that I wanted, so I ended up switching to the Beauty Bay highlighter in a flash for the inner corner and the brow bone, and it gave me a really nice highlight. I also sharpened up the edges of the cut crease using a smaller brush, and then went into my brown Inglot gel liner and added a thick liner that I then blended into the eyeshadow and went over using the darkest brown shade so that it really blended into the whole thing and matched up really well. I curled my eyelashes and then used my NARS Climax Extreme Mascara, and then tried to remove as much fallout as I possibly could before going in with my Wet n Wild blush in Nudist Society. And then to tie everything in together, I highlighted using the Beauty Bay highlighter I used on the eye. I set everything in place using the XX Revolution Quick Fix, added my Cara lashes by Libby Beauty, and then went in with the shade Fudge from the Revolution and Soph collab for a lovely warm lip. And that is it for look number 1. Moving on to look number 2 using the Brown Sugar palette, and we are starting this one off exactly the same way as the last one with that nice rounded shape, packing the colour on, and it is a really lovely deep red brown colour. Again, I'm blending that out to make sure we don't get any harsh edges. Then I went in with the orange, and the pigmentation on this one is really, really lovely. I really loved packing this one on. Probably one of my favourite shades in this collection so far. Then I followed it up with the lighter warm brown to blend out, and as you can see, no blending issues here. This is really, really lovely and going on very smoothly. To deepen the look up, I then went in to the shimmery brown shade on a pencil brush and started packing it on, and as you can see, this was a little bit more difficult. It went okay on the outer and inner corner, but then when I tried to pack it on in the crease, we were starting to struggle. I then went back through my shades from deepest to lightest to blend everything out and deepen it up, but we were really starting to have a struggle here in terms of blending. The creamy texture of the deeper shade really wasn't working. Using a fluffier brush, I then went into the lighter shade to blend all the edges out, and this is where I decided that it would be quite nice to start pulling the colour out closer to the cheek, just to give it a more blown out effect. I thought that would be quite nice to then blend into the blush later on. This time I went straight into my P. Louise paint and started carving out my halo eye. I didn't bother cleaning up the area before, and then I filled in the shape, and then again I used a flat brush to pat out the excess product. I went back into the darkest shade to blend the edges in together. As you can see, again, this colour really doesn't pack on very well. To fill in the halo, I went into the lighter metallic orange and started packing it on, but I did find that I was struggling a little bit, again because it is really, really crumbly. So I did spray my brush. I didn't find that this necessarily made it more metallic or more sparkly or anything, but it did definitely make the application a little bit easier and a little bit quicker. Then for the edges of the halo, I went into the slightly deeper orange and started blending that out into the deeper shade, and then I went back into the deeper shade again to blend that out. I did want to use the marble shade to bring some light into the center of the halo, and it really didn't have the effect that I wanted, so I sprayed the brush to try and intensify it, but it just wasn't building up on top of the other shades the way that I wanted. I then moved on to the lower lash line and unfortunately didn't hit record, but we're just blending the same shades as we did in the crease. And then I went into my Living My Best Light from Beauty Bay in Pyrite because I really wanted some glitter and brightening in the middle, and I just blended it out into the rest. Again, I went into my Inglot liner, added a nice thick liner that I've then blended into the eyeshadow. I just really felt like it completed the look. And then I decided a contrasting waterline would be really nice, so I went into this stunning Urban Decay liner. I also went back into the Beauty Bay highlighter for the brow bone and for the inner corner because there was nothing that really did it for me in the palette, and then used my L'Oreal Life's a Peach on the cheeks, which just matches so well to the shadow, as well as the highlighter again. Again, I removed as much fallout as I could, and I added the Ivy lashes from By Libby Beauty, although I think some fluffier ones would have worked better. And my lips are the Lime Crime Plushie in Pumpkin Latte with the Fenty Gloss in Cheeky. And of course, I also set everything in place with the XX Revolution Quick Fix. And that is look number 2. time for our third and final look, and don't worry, this time we are starting things off differently. I decided to start with my darkest shade in a diagonal wing shape on the outer corner, and then in the same direction on the inner corner, both on the eyelid and the lower lash line to create a spotlight. Then I went in with my second shade, and I immediately found that this was a lot warmer than the first one. Even though they're still cool tones, it just felt a lot warmer, so I felt like the blending was a little bit weird, but we're carrying on. I then went in with a much fluffier brush into my lighter shade, and I am blending those edges out, and this time I'm working it over the space in the middle just to give us a really nice transition. I then went into my deeper shades again, as usual, starting to deepen everything up, and I did start feeling like this was looking a little patchy at times, not gonna lie. Definitely noticing that in the outer corner. I went into the medium golden metallic shade, and this time I went in with my finger, and you can see that it applies really, really well. This is something that we know from W7 at this point. And then again in with my pencil brush for my darker metallic shade to blend them out. I feel like this one packed on a lot better than the deeper shade in the last palette. I also went into my fluffiest brush to blend everything out, and then I went in with the lightest metallic to brighten the center up, and it really wasn't doing it. So I tried some glitter primer, and it still didn't feel like it was popping and adding brightness. So to really get the look to pop, I went in with the Lois Cosmetics liquid eyeshadow in Queen's Guard. If you haven't tried these, they are gorgeous, and I really, really need more shades from her. And then again, I went in with the Beauty Bay highlighter in Flash for my inner corner and my brow bone. I also added my black Inglot gel eyeliner this time for a nice wing, which I extended into the inner corner, and I also added the liner to my waterline just to keep everything really nice and uniform and together, and blended that out into the eyeshadow. I again added my NARS Climax Extreme Mascara, and I went in with Wet n Wild in Nudist Society, as well as the highlighter. And then for my lips, we're keeping it cool toned. We're using Anti-Gravity from MUA, which is lovely and gorgeous. Lashes are the Ivy lashes from By Libby Beauty again, and this is the finished look. Alright guys, that is it for all of our looks using the new W7 palette. By the way, if my lighting looks any different in any way, I'm really, really sorry. I literally just filmed this entire outro, took all of my photos, and realised that I wasn't wearing any fake eyelashes. Anyway, let's go into my final thoughts on these palettes. Now, the first thing that I want to say is that I actually ended up having a lot more fun with these palettes than I originally expected. I didn't necessarily think that these palettes were going to be bad, but as I said to you at the start of the video, I had kind of forgotten that these Huda palettes had even existed in the first place. So when the palettes arrived, I wasn't, you know, super enthusiastic. I would have rather have seen a dupe for something else. But I did actually enjoy my time creating looks with these. One thing that I also feel the need to say to you before we go into my thoughts on each of the palettes individually is that overall, I don't think that W7's strength really lies in neutral or nude palettes. I really, really think that where they shine are these super, super bright colored palettes. My favorites from them are by far the Vivid palette and the Mardi Gras palette. And I think for that reason, the one that has really outshined the other two for me, which I really didn't expect, has been the Brown Sugar palette. And I think the reason for it is just that in terms of the mattes, yes, we do have a brown here and a more browny tone here, but we also have this orange here, and the pigmentation was great. It kind of outshone all of the other mattes for me. In fact, I have already ended up reusing this palette. I used it for a look at work. Also, the metallics are kind of all different enough from each other, which I don't feel like was always the case in some of the other palettes. Some of them were maybe a little bit too similar. The only downfall for this palette would have to be this shade over here, the darkest one. I would have wanted this personally to have been a matte, which obviously they're duping the Huda palettes. They're going for the same colors, they're going for the same sort of textures, the same finishes. So I realized why this one isn't a matte. I assume it wasn't in the original palette, but it just didn't really work for me at all. You guys saw that because it is more of that creamy texture, I really, really struggled to blend it. When I ended up reusing this palette, I thought, let me try some smoky eye, let me put this all over the lid. I'll use my finger, thinking it would come out really nice and sparkly, and that just really wasn't the case. So this shade for me is a fail. It should have either been way more glittery, way more interesting, or just a plain old boring matte, and I think that this would have ended up being, you know, kind of a perfect palette out of the three. That would be my biggest criticism of that one. Now, the one that I thought would be my favorite was the Sweet Honey palette, just because it's a little bit more interesting than your usual just neutral brown palettes, and that is because of the pop of yellow in the middle. However, again, I do just think that W7's strength really isn't the more nude shades, and I just thought the blending between the two browns, the pigmentation, just not my favorite there. I would have also really liked it if this shade had been a little bit lighter, just to be more of an inner corner and brow bone highlight. So that did kind of bother me a little bit with this one, but other than that, the other metallics, and same goes for the brown sugar, they were more creamy, they were really chunky, but I don't think that the texture looked bad on the lid, which is an issue I've had with them before. So I do feel like I got on with these a lot better than I have some previous metallics. And then when it gets to the Sweet Cocoa palette, that one was a little bit disappointing. I just went into this look with an idea of something that I wanted to do. I put this shade on and it was so cool toned. So it was starting to take it in a different direction, and I was like, okay, this could be really interesting. I could really like it, actually. And the other shades just kind of didn't match up. They were just almost very warm in comparison to that shade, so I wasn't a fan of that. And again, the blending in this one was the most disappointing, which makes sense because it is kind of the most nude neutrally of all of them. I would say kind of the same thing was happening with this one as with the darker shade in the Sweet Cocoa. When I tried to use it to blend it out, I just was having to dig quite a lot. And then in terms of these two metallics, I again would have wanted this one to be just a bit brighter, just a bit more glittery, so that when I put it on top of this one, it would have just done a bit more. So I have to say that, yeah, this one is not my favorite, and if you really wanted to get the palette, I would probably just skip this one. I would say it's not worth it. I would just go for the other two personally. So overall, I would say that this is just not my favorite release from W7. Again, I do just gravitate more towards their brighter, bolder releases. I think that that is where their quality really does shine for me. But if you really wanted the original Huda palettes and you can't justify the 80-90 pounds to get all three of them, obviously this is a lot cheaper. It is there as an option. And if you're debating between all of them, I would get this one. So that is the end of the video, guys. I really hope as always that you enjoyed it and that you did find it helpful if you were considering getting any of these palettes. Let me know what you thought of them in the comments, if you are planning on getting any of them or if you've already got them. What do you think? Do you agree with me? Do you disagree? Just let me know in the comments. If you enjoyed the video, then do please also make sure to give it a big thumbs up, and if you haven't already, then make sure you hit the subscribe button as well as the notification bell so that you don't miss out on any of my future videos, and I'll see you all on the next one. Bye, guys!